I'm Todd Hagenbuch with Arborchem Products. This is my 23rd year in vegetation management. I have a degree in forest science from Penn State University. Probably my biggest connection to this industry because I sell products to state DOTs, railroads, cities, municipalities, industrial site contractors, you name it, anything to do with right-of-way, industrial, and then forestry and invasive plant actually fall into our category. We're not considered turf and ornamental or agriculture, although a lot of these invasives may interfere in the turf and ornamental setting or even an agricultural setting. We really classify them as more like a forestry or an industrial type application. So there is a contractor here today, Brett Robinson, who I work with, and he's one of dozens of contractors I work with in the Mid-Atlantic that do invasive plant and forestry vegetation management. And I'll show you some slides that are, as you can see in this first slide, are a little more indicative of what I call the Allegheny high plateau region, where you have the hay-scented fern, striped maple, beech brush complex. But down here, we transition into more typical hickory forests and things of that nature. We have all kinds of invasives that you won't find in that same kind of country. Down here, it's the bush honeysuckles, the ailanthus, the multiflora rose, and everybody knows the list goes on, right? We're not going to spend a lot of time on every individual plant. I hope we can cover more of that when we're out in the field. But before I go further, I have to plug our company. That's why I'm here doing this for free, so hopefully it will generate some leads and opportunities for us. But Arborchem is a large national distributor of herbicides and application equipment. Our catalog is in the back, and my business card is back there as well. Another thing we've started to do recently is we developed a YouTube page. So some of the application techniques you see today, we've actually videoed those and put instruction in them as well. So if you ever need to figure out how to do a certain application, yeah. So essentially, we can ship anywhere in the country. You know, our products, people can be in the next state over, or they can be in Utah. We can ship the products to those states. So don't think because I'm not local, we're based out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. That's fairly local, actually, compared to a lot of meetings I go to. I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin earlier this week. So if you're looking for any of these products today, any of the equipment that we're going to talk about, certainly give us a call, email me, whatever you want to do. We're going to try to get this thing going, or otherwise I'm going to freestyle. This is probably good.
Talk for 45 minutes on fly fishing for trout, because that's what I'd rather be doing right now. All right, so different applications for controlling woodland and old field invasives and interfering vegetation. Today, out here, we're looking at a lot of different invasives. I could just throw the list out there of what I remember. Ailanthus is very common. A gentleman brought in a leaf this morning, and I didn't recognize it right away because it was just a couple of the leaflets sticking out of the bag until he pulls the whole leaf out. And I said, oh, we have plenty of that out here to show you today. So we've killed plenty of it, and we'll actually probably kill some more of it today while you're on site. There's ailanthus, there's bush honeysuckle, there's multiflora rose, oriental bittersweet, and we'll point them out, all the others that are out there. If you're in the more mountainous regions of Maryland, western Maryland, you may have this issue, hay-scented fern. It is not an invasive. This is a native plant, okay? We call it an interfering plant, okay? The reason being is it acts like an invasive. You cannot generate trees in this stuff. You cannot regenerate seedlings in hay-scented fern. So what have we done for the last 30 years with hay-scented fern? We spray Alst on it. And we take and make the understory look ugly for a year or two. But we're prepping that soil, we're opening it up, and we get our seedlings regenerated in those understories. And if you have a heavy deer density area, you may even need to fence that area to get those things going. Are we getting feedback? Okay, I'm hearing it. So that's hay-scented fern. Black birch, if you had this on your site, can get very aggressive. Also a native plant, but can be very interfering in trying to grow trees. Striped maple, again, up in the mountain regions, same idea. There's places I've seen in Pennsylvania you can't walk through the striped maple. It's so thick. They're talking diameters that are 5-6 inches, and it's just so thick. Of course, we use skidders with big mist blowers on them to kill plants like this. Now, we're starting to get into plants that you're more accustomed to seeing. How many people have mile-a-minute on their property? Okay. You know why you have mile-a-minute on your property. Where it was introduced in the United States was just up the road, in York County, Pennsylvania, back in, I think, the 50s or the 60s. And now it's 300 and some miles in every direction in circumference, or radius. Take a radius and go out 300 miles, you can find mile a minute. And then I'm sure it's outside of that now. That was a fact that I threw out there about 8-10 years ago. I'm sure it spread even further. Annual plant, that's the only advantage we have of this plant compared to something like kudzu. That's a perennial type vine that continues to grow from where it was the previous year. This is just going to continue to grow from seed, which is also something we really need to take into consideration when managing this plant. We can go in and foliage treat this with rodeo and a surfactant and kill it very easily. There's a lot of different herbicides that will take this plant out, no problem. But if you don't address the seed source that's in the soil, you have not managed this plant. It is just going to come back the next year. So that's where we have to incorporate soil active chemistry like Oust, potentially Proclips, Pendulum. I'm just throwing some names around. If you ever need prescriptions on any of this, you email me, give me your situation, and I can develop a little prescription for you that should work for your scenario. Japanese knotweed, how many people have this? Okay. This is difficult to manage. There's no two ways about Japanese knotweed. Also called fleece flower, Japanese bamboo, false bamboo, a couple other names for it. The reason being that people have difficulty managing this plant is they treat it at the wrong time of the year. They're typically going in there in June when they see it fully bloomed out, or not bloomed out, but fully grown for the first time in the year. Now it's 6 feet tall in June, they go and spray it. I don't care what chemistry you're using. We can burn off the foliage and make it look dead, but it just suckers back. It just root suckers right back. The timing of application with Japanese knotweed is late summer into fall, essentially before the first frost. You can get the application in there in the month of August and September. That's the best results you're going to see. And a lot of that research was done at Penn State by Art Gover. Some of you may recognize that name, but simply using the same chemistry, something like rodeo with a good surfactant. Sometimes we add Polaris or Arsenal. Those are soil active herbicides. So I caution people in using those. If you have maple trees, maybe right around where you're treating those Japanese knotweed, you will kill those maple trees as well. We're not dancing around these things anymore. A lot of people get the wrong products in their hands and don't know what the outcome is going to be of that application. So I keep a lot of these soil active chemistries out of the common landowner's hands because they're going to start getting more than they bargained for when they get out there. So products like Polaris, Arsenal, Tordon, Method, Streamline, Viewpoint, I generally keep those in commercial applicators' hands because they do have soil activity and there's a potential to cause overstory tree damage with those type chemistries. But simply a glyphosate and good surfactant with this late in the season. I like to high volume it, and I'm going to demonstrate what a high volume application looks like later on today. Japanese barberry, glyphosate and escort, or rodeo and escort if you want a brand name, with a good surfactant, takes out barberry very well. Bush honeysuckle. A lot of people like Garlon. How many people have used Garlon before? Garlon does not work on bush honeysuckle, okay? It works on autumn olive beautifully, but it will not work on bush honeysuckle. Glyphosate and escort works very well, but mostly the glyphosate is doing the work on the bush honeysuckle. And we make a concoction for these invasive shrubs because typically you're going to have a complex of them. Sometimes it is only the bush honeysuckle that you're treating, but in many cases you're treating privet, bush honeysuckle, autumn olive, multiflora rose, all on the same site. So we make a concoction of Garlon with rodeo and escort and a proper surfactant, and then we can pick up all those shrubs with one mix. Multiflora rose, escort is an excellent product for controlling multiflora rose with a good surfactant. Autumn olive, anything with triclopyr in it will annihilate autumn olive, I promise. Okay, simple as that. Japanese stiltgrass. You can kill stiltgrass all you want post-emergently, but it goes right back to that hay-scented fern or that mile a minute. If we don't address the seed source with Japanese stiltgrass, we're going to have Japanese stiltgrass back on the site. Even with products like Alst, we're only seeing about 2 years of control on stiltgrass with that soil residual activity, and then the site tends to get repopulated by stiltgrass. So this right now is one of our biggest nemesis for forest site invasive plants. Ailanthus, okay, tree of heaven. I like to rename it tree from hell, because in reality that's what it is. Its root suckering ability, its ability to throw a lot of seed, its ability to actually put out allelopathic type chemicals to create these little colonies, not little colonies, they can be large colonies sometimes. And so many people will mistake these for sumac. In reality, they're ailanthus. The dead giveaway on ailanthus is when you look, this is a leaf, right? This whole long frond here is a leaf. Each of these is a leaflet. On the side, on those edges of that leaflet, it's smooth till you get all the way to the bottom of the lobe, and there's one little serration at the bottom. Where you look at a sumac on the leaflet, when you're looking at the leaflet, serrated on the edge. Okay, simply that's the way to give it away. Ailanthus stinks. It has a pungent smell. When you get into an ailanthus patch, you'll know it if it's a thick patch of ailanthus. Escort works tremendously well on it as a foliar treatment. Very, very slow activity. You're wondering if it's ever going to kill it. You start treating it in June and you're looking at it in July and it's still looking like it's pretty healthy, not showing any symptomology yet. Then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, the thing starts to fold. Why do you think slow acting herbicides work really well on something like ailanthus? What are we trying to kill when we're trying to kill the ailanthus? I could smoke the leaves. Yeah, we want to kill the roots. I could smoke the leaves right off an ailanthus in June with a high rate of Garlon because it's such a fast-acting herbicide. But I'm getting virtually no root activity when I do that. Okay, so if I want a quick visual and see it die quick, fine, you could do that, but you've defeated the purpose. You might as well go out with a chainsaw and hack it off and just let it sprout back. Right, you need to use something like Escort. A lot of times we'll combine it with glyphosate, like a rodeo, so that if we are in a site that we're going after other targets, we can get those as well. So you can basal this and you can hack and squirt this. We will show that today on the larger trees. Timing of the hack and squirt is crucial. The later we can go into the summer with that hack and squirt, the better we control the root system. All right, so August, September, glyphosate 50-50, triclopyr 50-50 with water. We see the better results. And then I don't really condone stump treatment of ailanthus. I don't find that it is the best way to attack an ailanthus tree. So we'll talk about those things. Okay, application type. How do we go about taking these all out? We have low volume basal. We will demonstrate that today. That's used with a backpack. We're using a carrier oil, a paraffinic oil, that's designed to break through the bark of the tree and get the herbicide into the plant. Okay, so we'll demonstrate that today. Works on a lot of different species. Basically any tree species you can do a basal treatment on. Stump treatments, that's where you would cut a tree down and then actually treat that stump with the idea of getting the herbicide down in the root system and preventing any suckering coming back from that stump. Low volume foliage. This is probably most commonly used by maybe a homeowner or someone that is a novice at spraying. They're going to take a backpack and they're going to make a concoction of herbicides and water and they're going to apply it to the foliage of the plant. And we still use it in industrial applications and commercial applications. Very effective on smaller type trees that we can get at. And with the right herbicide, it's very effective. Ultra low volume thinvert, I will demonstrate this today. It's maybe not for everybody. The gun alone is going to cost you about $400. But for a commercial applicator, the advantage of a low thinvert application over a standard foliar application is that I can make that same backpack that you had with water in it go 4 times further with that thin vert carrier in it, and I could treat the same amount of acreage. So if you're out there trying to be efficient in covering a lot of ground, you're not spending time going back to the truck to fuel up with water and remix herbicides, that's going to be the better application method. High volume foliage, one of my most favorite applications because it gives you a lot of gratification to get a big gun in your hand and get about 125 pounds of pressure and pull the trigger and just start lacing everything that you hate. All these plants that you hate, you get to give it to them. With these other methods, it's a little more incognito. With the high volume, you know you're doing something, and you're going to see it today. Backpack mist blower, I believe Brett might have brought one along today to demonstrate. And skidder mounted air blast machines, this is when we're really getting into large tracts of lands that are inundated with very incompatible understory vegetation. And we get to the point sometimes in these sites that they're so overtaken by the invasives or the competing vegetation that we cannot take a mild approach, such as going in with a basal or a low volume foliage application. We need to go reclaim that understory. And so we'll go in with a machine and a mist blower, and we'll drive through that understory, and we'll create a pattern that will cover everything in the understory. And we'll start over. So it would almost mimic what a fire would do if you had a low intensity fire that would stay in the understory and just take everything out. So now all your overstory trees then can seed back into that area in the next year or the coming years. Hack and squirt, great on larger parent trees. So Ailanthus is a great example of a tree that we would do hack and squirt on. A lot of times these Ailanthus stands, you'll have dozens of these 1 to 2 inch trees that are all suckers coming off the root system of a parent tree. So you might have a 15, 20 inch diameter Ailanthus there with all these suckers. We can go and hack and squirt that big parent tree and even get some translocation, depending on the chemistry we're using, into those suckers. But I would still want to treat those suckers possibly with a basal treatment or even a foliar treatment if it was in the summer months. So, low volume basal. This is a B&G basal wand. This is kind of the industry standard for this type of application. The idea with this application, 12 to 15 inches up around the base, come full circumference. If I have a multi-stem species, do I need to treat all those stems? Yes, you do. So if you have an autumn olive or a bush honeysuckle that has multi-stems coming up, make sure you get every one of those individually and come full circumference around that plant. This is on a black birch. This can be done in the dormant season. As you can see in this photo, there's no foliage on. So you can actually come in here and do this in dormant. No, the tree is not bleeding. That is a red dye, and this is a blue dye. So we typically like the blue dye because they don't stain as bad in the spray tank and things like that. The red really stains pretty heavily, but it's your preference, whichever you would like to use. Why do we use a dye? Well, if you have 500 stems to treat between here and the driveway out there, you're going to want to know which ones you've treated already, or you're going to be doing one of these, looking around for some oil on that stem. But if you have dye on those stems, you can really see where you've been. This is a stump treatment. You're using oil-based chemistry such as Pathfinder or Garlon 4 Ultra with basal oil. We not only treat this cambium layer or the xylem phloem area, but we also treat this root flare that's left over. If we're using a water-based chemistry like rodeo to do a stump treatment, immediately after I cut that thing down, I'm treating it. With this oil-based Garlon 4 and basal, I could wait a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever I want to do. Even if that thing's sprouting back, I can still treat that stump and maybe treat those sprouts that are coming. But it allows you more freedom with your timing and coming back to treat that. Personally, if I'm removing trees, then I want to treat them the same day I'm removing them. It's easier to find them while you're there, know where they are, get that done while you're on site. Here's what a water-based application would look like, where you're just putting it right up on the surface of the stump in that xylem phloem. Why don't we treat the heartwood? Because it's dead. There you go. Someone had it right. You're wasting the herbicide if you put it in the heartwood. There's nothing going on here. All the nutrients flow out here in the edge of the tree. So that's where we put the herbicide. If I had a 2-inch diameter tree that I'm removing, how would I treat that surface of that stump? I'm just going to spray over the top of it. I'm not going to worry about trying to get that xylem phloem area because it's too difficult to treat that small area. This is the backpack that I choose if I'm doing basal, thin vert, basically basal and thin vert. This one is the industrial grade backpack. It is not cheap. I even was with some commercial industrial right-of-way applicators there in Wisconsin this week, and they were hemming and hawing whether they were going to buy these. They had bought a few, but they have 82 crews, so 82 backpacks. When you're talking a Basal wand and a Birchmeier backpack, you're talking over $400 a setup for 82 crews. That adds up pretty good. So I said, why don't you get 12 of them and put them on the crews that are going to do the most basal, because you're going to be effective, you're going to be efficient, and you're going to have a backpack that stands up to that basal material. These things are commercial grade. They have everything in them is designed to handle that basal material. I'll talk about the maintenance of these today when we're in the field, but simply put, there's a little grease fitting here. If you take care of that and put lithium grease in there once in a while after you've turned it all the way in, you're good to go. There's a check valve in here, same thing, check on that once in a while. And you can make these things last for 10 years, 15 years if you take care of them. A lot of different aftermarket wands or guns we can put on these. This would be the standard wand that comes with the Birchmeier, but then this one is the B&G Basal wand. Now, why do you think I would use this one over this one for basal treatment? Well, for one, this one shuts off. When you let go of this trigger here, this one shuts off right here. What happens to the material that's still in the wand after I let go? It drips. This one has a cable that runs the length of this right to the tip. When I let off of this one, it immediately stops. There is no waste. Okay? And this one is low volume. I'm going to show you how to do a basal treatment today. You're going to be like, are you sure that's enough on that bark to control that plant? And it is. Most people typically will over apply when doing a basal treatment, but I just get a quick coverage on the bark and make sure I come all the way 12 to 15 inches up and all the way around. You'll be surprised how little it takes to get an effective control on these trees. So there's the wand. I used to say it pays for itself in a week or two. This $165 aftermarket spray wand. Okay, it's industrial. But I've had guys come up to me and say, that paid for itself in one day. And a forestry applicator told me that they were wasting so much basal material with the standard wands on the solo backpacks that thing paid for itself in one day with the amount of chemical they saved. You're talking about products that cost $32 to $44 a gallon of mixed material. If you apply 1 gallon extra per acre and you're doing 4 acres, you've paid for that. Okay? See, these are the different nozzles you can put on it. Typically, it comes with a Y3, which allows for it to be used in pretty much any season. This guy I have with me today, it's kind of become our new standard for stump treating out there, and it works really good for hack and squirt as well. Most of these type pump-up sprayers, you go to Lowe's or Home Depot's, pick one of them up and try to pressurize a bottle. You cannot get them to pressurize. And hence, when you go to spray with them, they drip out, they pattern. This thing creates a true pattern, has good Viton seals in it, can handle the oil-based chemistry. If you want to put Pathfinder or Varlon 4 in here, Basal, you can. And these run about $30. We do carry these. We've had these now for 6 months. We've sold 700 of them. Now, commercial tree contractors would use these when they remove a tree and they treat the stump. So that's where a lot of those are going. Birchmeier, the 4-gallon backpack sprayer. I just kind of made a little diagram here with all the aftermarket stuff you can have. Standard spray wand. Then you have the low volume water or thin vert gun. Essentially, this is a Model 30 gun, and we just put different nozzles up here. Of course, then we have an aftermarket hose. It handles the basal and the thin vert material better than the standard hose. And then this is the B&G Basal wand. They do make a comfort kit for these. Of course, at another expense in addition to the backpack if you so choose. Maintenance of these, simply each day you use this, you're to turn this little dial in about a half a turn, and that will grease the piston. That will keep the handle from locking up on you. If you don't do that, promise you that handle will lock up and you'll have to stand on that handle to break it free. It'll lock up so badly. But if you take care of that and do that, that handle will never lock up on you. Once you've turned it all the way in, after you used it so many days, back it back out, put something like a sill glide material in there, and start the process all over again. Check valves. Right here, there's simply a check valve in the pump itself that sometimes will collect debris in these little springs here. If the backpack's not operating properly, that's one of the places I look for it to be a problem. I like this aftermarket O-ring. This is the typical O-ring that comes with it. It doesn't stand up to the oil for very long before that starts to eat at it a little bit. It's very soft. This is almost like a soft rubber, where this is a hard rubber ring that we put in here aftermarket. At the end of the year, you can clean your backpacks, or at the end of the week, and you know you're not going to spray for a while. Dawn dishwashing detergent works great to take a lot of those oil-based chemistries out. Foliar applications. Here, just demonstrating how we can go in and target a small area of fern simply with a Model 30 rollover gun. I was a little younger there, maybe 15, 20 years ago. Here's a high volume application we were doing last year. Anybody know the plant that I'm targeting there? That's autumn olive, yep. So I'm showing just this as standard Swiss Mix Super Pro Duty backpack. When we're just dealing with water-based mixes, these are great and they're cheaper. They're still quality backpack. They still handle it. And now I'm carrying a Chapin 24-volt battery-operated backpack, so you don't have to pump anymore. And they're pretty neat. I'll show that today as well.
Comes with an automatic walker too, doesn't it?
Yeah. Here's what a thin vert application looks like. What do you notice about that pattern there? Instead of being a constant full pattern, where if this was water, this would be a full sheen of water going across there. There's actually breaks between each one of these streams. So when it lands on the foliage of your target, there's these little droplets on each leaflet. And those droplets spread out and they control that plant. And I could show you some of the results of what we did a couple of months back. But again, this is probably tailored a little more towards the commercial side. Here's a high volume. This is the one I said we get a lot of gratification out of doing high volume. Notice, is there anything there that you see that you really would want to keep? Maybe some of these, maybe some plants down here, maybe that's goldenrod or something, but you got autumn olive, multiflora rose, and I'm just getting it. I'm getting it. And you'll see today what I mean by that. I can open that pattern out and I can get a shrub that's 8 feet tall and 10 feet wide, covered in 30 seconds. Completely covered, and it will kill that plant. That's what the results of that are. As you can see, a lot of plants that are in the understory of that will actually start to flush in the following year. But you'll have these dead stalks here for a couple years and then they'll just fall down. This is the gun I use. It's a high volume application, but you get the idea. Back to the backpack, equipped with foliar, thin vert, or basal. We talked about that. I actually have this wand along today. This one's really more designed if you're going to go out and do oust with a backpack. We can use a CF valve. CF stands for a constant flow, right? And then I have an OC nozzle in there that's going to create a 4 or 5 foot pattern for me. Why would I need a constant flow nozzle? Most of these products that we're using, we're going to mix to the solution. And what does that mean? So if I say 1%, how many ounces in a gallon is 1%? We're going to test everybody's math skills here. What'd you say? 1.28. There's 128 ounces in a gallon. 1% of that is 1.28 ounces. So if I wanted to make a 1% solution of rodeo in a backpack, it would be 1.28 ounces of rodeo per gallon of water, right? And if I'm doing, say, a oust application, with that rodeo application, I may be just getting coverage on the plants, spraying all the foliage of the targets that I want to try to control. But if I'm doing an oust application, I'm going to deliver so many ounces of oust per acre on a site. I'm not going to go out there and just kind of haphazardly deliver that oust on a site. If I want 2 ounces per acre, I have to be able to calibrate that. And that's where that constant flow nozzle comes into place. So that as I walk through that site, I can deliver the same amount of material consistently throughout that site. Whereas if I have a standard backpack without that CF valve and I'm pumping, I'm going to have varying pressures of 10 psi to 50 psi all the time. As that thing lowers pressure as I'm spraying and then I repump it, now I'm back up to 50 pounds. With that CF valve, that red guy right there, I can keep that at 21 psi all the time. So I'm delivering the same amount of material all the time. Here's the one of the backpacks we carry that's kind of the lower standard one that's great for water applications. I think these run about 130 compared to 260 for that red Birchmire. Here's the Chapin 24-volt sprayer. You can see I'm happy to have one. I don't have to pump anymore. I was elated. I said, look at this thing. I just turned the switch on, I put it on, I just start spraying. So I will demonstrate that one today. Man, that thing produces some pressure. I was really surprised the pattern I could get with that. And I was actually treating a bunch of invasives here around this farm building. And I went through that backpack pretty quick. I mean, it really puts it to it. The foliar gun, this is again an aftermarket type gun where we can have 2 different nozzles on here. We can have one like a flat fan type nozzle to give good coverage on a shrub, quick coverage so it fans out, covers everything. Or we can have an adjustable type nozzle that we can create a cone direct pattern or spread that pattern out. Just all the different parts that go there. When you're talking high volume applications, we actually do, we have a third party that builds all our sprayers that we sell out to our customers, but they are definitely on a commercial grade. Something like this that we could make would cost you about $5,000 and then have a warranty for a year, and all the parts would be commercial grade compared to something like North Star sprayer. It's going to last a lot longer than this one, but you could probably buy this North Star sprayer from North Star for $2,500, half the price of ours. So if you're going to go do a lot of old field succession shrub spraying, these are nice to have because you can actually get out there and really get quick coverage on all these targets. This is a little more common where they slide into the back of the pickup truck. You can have 5 horsepower to 9 horsepower motors, 50 to 300 gallon poly tanks depending on what your truck can hold. If you have a 3500, you can hold a bigger tank, right? And pressures of upwards of 200 psi. Do we need 200 psi to do what we're doing? If you're applying insecticides and you're blasting it up into the tree or a fungicide, maybe you'll need those pressures. But typically, I get away with somewhere around 100 pounds of pressure, and that works pretty well. A couple different guns that can be used for high volume. See my time here. Different nozzles. Then we have mist blowing. Steel makes SR 450. That's the most commonly used one that I've seen. I think that's what you have. Works great out there. The only drawback of a backpack like this is where they mount these tanks. If you get into uneven terrain and you use your mist blowers, you have 3 gallons of water up on your shoulders. On uneven terrain, it will throw your route. What are the problems up in the mountains? You get on a side hill and you have a cradle knoll where a tree uprooted. You get into one and that thing's throwing you around. It's tough to stay on your feet. So this gentleman here actually developed his own. We took the highest output leaf blower they make, took a 3 gallon tank, mounted on the front, ran the hoses right directly to the input at the end here, and he created his own mist blower that's balanced, because the weight is on the front of him and then the weight's on the back. And that guy, almost by himself, treats 1,500 acres a year, starting in June and ending at the end of September. 1,500 acres. He's now, what, 62 years old or something? There's another gentleman doing something. Now this is really handy when you have the stiltgrass, you have the fern, where you have complete coverage in an understory situation where you're not going to do little targeted areas. You're actually going to treat that whole understory. We can actually deliver a quick pattern in there. I could probably treat this room in all of, what do you figure, 10 seconds? You can get coverage. 10 seconds, I could have this whole room covered. Now, if I had a standard wand on the spray wand, it would take me minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes to treat this whole room. But in 10 seconds, I could cover this whole room with that mist blower. Is a mist blower good in an open field setting? No. The micron droplets are so small, you get a 5-mile-an-hour wind, and that mist will just carry. So the only place I suggest you use a mist blower with herbicides would be in an understory of a forest, where you can keep it on site, keep it on the targets. Here's Forest Regeneration Services, their big skidder. Actually, they've upgraded this thing multiple times since then, but this gives you an idea. This is all striped maple in here, just solid as it comes. And they're delivering there. When the sign's right, and Brad will tell you, they can deliver 120 packers in one swap. There have been days that these have 4 or 5 big ones out there that have all exceeded 100 acres in one day. Like this. Now they charge 100 to 120 bucks an acre. That's not a bad day for billing, is it? 100 times 120, $12,000 billing for one day. Believe me, they have plenty of days that are broken down and then plenty of days where they're doing 10 acres, so it balances out in the end. But it's typically those fern sites that I showed in the first couple of slides that they can do those large acreage days. When they get into the heavy striped maple and beech brush and black birch, then all those acres come down because they need to tighten that pattern to get good coverage on all this. Here's Smirker's unit. This is what it will look like in many cases. Not pretty, is it? Guess what? There isn't anything in there that was native or desirable. And if it was native, it was impeding proper forest regeneration. So in order to get it replanted, you can see there's a pattern here. It's about 15 to 20 everything in the story was killed. When you go back there 3 or 4 years later, you have seedlings everywhere on this site. You're off of it. That's the biggest issue. But it's not going to look like that unless you are targeting everything. If you want to, you can be very selective with something like this and go in there and take individual areas that are inundated with invasives. Hagenbuch, gentleman up at Penn State, Dave Jackson, has been very integral in this industry. He's developed some things and has a great website on vegetation management. He actually developed this hatchet. He had this cut into a smaller blade so that it would work perfect on Atlantis. It's about this size. And when you're going to hack and square Atlantis like that, leaving a little gap between each cut, you allow for more of that nutrient transfer, and they're carrying that herbicide with it. Number of different bottles work good for this. I like this one, of course, because I sell it. But no, there's a lot of different bottles that'll work. This is an old one that we used to carry, and this one, you can kind of surmise what website that's on right there, Forestry Suppliers. That's a decent bottle for this too. This bottle is not going to last like that bottle, I promise you. Miscellaneous, we can do ATVs and all kinds of wacky setups depending on what you got there. There's a lot of tools out there, and I think if you get yourself a basic backpack with your Basal wand, foliar gun, and even if you build yourself a small high volume system, you can do a lot of invasive plant control with just that piece of equipment. That's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Brett and let him show you some pictures.